Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye fans, to Punting is Winning, the All Iowa podcast. We are your hosts, Keith and JD. Back here after week number 10, game number 9 for Iowa. The Wisconsin Badgers came to town and probably wish they hadn't, which is fine with me. I saw a kid on TikTok that posted about how Wisconsin was just going to boat race Iowa, and I just would love to find him and rub it in his face, but that's beside the point.
But did you see part 2 of that?
No.
He apologizes.
Well, usually when you have egg on your face, you have to. So.
Yeah, he did. And it was a pretty heartfelt, sincere. I didn't despise him quite as much after he said all that stuff when he presented his apology.
Ahead of time, though, wasn't he?
Oh, he's talking about
Kinnick, a glorified high school stadium.
And then belt to the ass or something.
Yeah.
Whatever, buddy.
You know what? You compare Kinnick to Camp Randall, there's no comparison because Camp Randall's a dump compared to Kinnick.
Yeah.
So, and that's not even being biased, even. That's just a fact.
I thought it was kind of funny after the game that Iowa played jump around.
Yeah, I didn't really particularly like that because I don't like to rub it into your opponent, but I mean, if it was Iowa State, that'd be one thing, but I mean, Wisconsin, it's a rivalry, but it's more of a conference thing. And, you got to play them every year. I wouldn't do something like that, maybe, but as Iowa State, maybe I would do it because they have no identity anyway. And they got beat yesterday too. That made yesterday even that much better. So,
it's a good weekend when Iowa wins, Iowa State loses, and Nebraska loses. That makes a pretty good weekend.
And you throw in Notre Dame if they'd lose, that would be even better. So,
yep.
But anyway, let's hit question of the week. Last week's question of the week was, since the advent of the Heartland Trophy in 2004, what is the Iowa-Wisconsin record? What is Iowa's record against Wisconsin in those games? And Dean from Talking Hawkeye Sports was able to come up with the answer for that. Iowa has won 8 and lost 10 prior to last night, so now it's 9 and 10. I think the way they've been playing, we could make it 10 and 10 next year. That would be great. But yeah, 8 and 10 was the correct answer. If you go back to 2 years prior to that, I think Iowa won the 2 years prior to that as well. So, the last 20 matchups prior to last night it's 10 and 10. So pretty even matchup with those two teams.
Did you know that Wisconsin leads the all-time series 49-47, and there were 2 ties?
So
they are actually leading.
Going into last night or after last night?
No, after last night.
Okay.
It was 49-46 and 2. It's now 49-47 and 2. So they've won 49. Iowa's won 47. And there have been 2 ties.
Well, I did hear him say that was the largest margin of victory for Iowa against Wisconsin since '68.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That's
it's always good to beat your opponent in submission for a change instead of having those games where you're
fact check that, but I assume that since they said that, they must be correct.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna.
I liked having a game where you didn't have to sit on the edge of your seat the whole game. And
man, did I get that one wrong? I thought this was going to be one of them heart-stopping, last team that has the ball is going to win type of thing. And I said I would be shocked if one team ran away with it, and color me shocked. Totally didn't get that one right. And I'd be the first to admit it.
Well, I've got some thoughts on that. But we'll go ahead and let's get your thoughts on last night's game first, and then I've got a few thoughts on that.
First of all, let me ask you something first before we get too far into this.
Okay.
How do you go back to Cade McNamara after the last 6 quarters and a half of Sullivan? How do you do it?
The only way you can go back is if he gets hurt, or if he goes out the next game and throws 4 picks or fumbles the ball or whatever. Then you have to stop and think, okay, maybe caught lightning in a bottle a couple of games, but now something else has happened here and we got to change the pace or something. But you can't go back to saying, oh, well, Cade was my starter at the beginning of the year. Brendan came in and did a great job, but Cade's now my starter again. You can't do that. There's just no way. And I don't think he will. I think
there's people out there that think he's going to bring Cade right back in and he's going to start.
I don't think he will. I
don't
think he knows
can.
that. No, I think he knows that right now Brendan Sullivan gives him his best option to win games, and he wants to win those games because he wants to be able to, like I said, he wants to set that Big Ten record of wins. He wants to get that 60% win percentage so he's Hall of Fame eligible, and then right off into the sunset. And I think he's kind of getting to that point where he's kind of ready to do that. So I don't see him going back. I think he just assumed that at some point Cade was going to turn the corner, because Cade of 3 years ago was a pretty decent quarterback, and that's what he was hoping to get back to. And I don't think it was ever going to happen again after the injuries. The mechanics are, I don't know if the mechanics are because of the injuries. He's compensated, what the deal is. He's not the same guy he was 3 years ago, and I don't think he's ever going to be that way again. And I think that's what Kirk was hoping, and he would have that, see, look, I told you, we had a quality quarterback here. He got back to where he was at, and it just didn't happen. So now Brendan comes in. Is he setting the world on fire with, eye-popping numbers? No. But what he does is he allows that, takes a little bit of the pressure off of everybody else. And everybody feeds off of that energy. I've noticed it with the defense, the offense, everything. They feed off of him being in there and allowing them, the defense is like, oh, the offense is actually helping us. So let's go out and just pin our ears back and do our job instead of having to be perfect.
Well, definitely one of the things I noticed was there's definitely an energy difference. And of course, and they hit it on the head last night when they were talking, the announcer was talking about how when that running threat is there, it forces the defense to have to account for a running quarterback. So they can't just, we've talked about this. They said it again last night. I don't think you can argue with it, that he presents a defensive struggle or something that, I don't want to use struggle. Struggle is not the word. They have to account for him every possession, every snap, that he won't take that ball out of the running back's hands and take off with it, or take off around the corner and then throw the ball. We saw that a couple of times last night. Those are the things that the defense can no longer just key on Johnson. They just can't do it. And I think that's what opens up Johnson for a lot more opportunities to run, because it's freezing that linebacker for that split second while he has to determine who has the ball. And it's creating creases and opportunities. And sometimes, the RPO is not perfect and it's not going to work every single time. Sometimes you make the wrong read. I get that. Absolutely. I mean, he made a wrong read and got flushed out of the pocket and he threw a ball into the stands. Yeah, he was out of the tackle box, but he didn't make it to the line of scrimmage. That was really one of the few things I saw last night that I thought, that's a young guy making a mistake. But, he's not that young. He's a junior and he has played, and those are things that he cannot allow to happen going forward. That's just a silly mistake. But there were so many other things that he did that I'm not sure I would have seen that come out of Cade. That time when he was running around back there and he went to the Iowa sidelines, and at the last minute he threw the ball out of bounds ahead of the sticks. And I don't know, Cade might have he may have thrown it out, but he wouldn't have got there to begin with because he's just not that quick. It's just, and Brendan's got speed. He could run. When he ran right down to the 1 foot line where they reviewed it and called it back to the 1 foot line, man, he was outrunning people and he juked guys. And I mean, those are the things that you don't get from Cade. And that's what creates opportunities for other players.
Yeah. And
you can't argue with that. There's no, it's plain as the nose on your face. If you don't know football, then you're going to say that Cade's your best bet, and that's going forward. You can't say that. You just don't know anything. You need to just. I think you're letting your biases cloud your vision a little bit.
I mean, if your system is a straight drop back pro style system and you don't want to run anything other than that, then yeah, Cade probably is your best bet. But I don't know, maybe, and that's debatable as well.
I don't think that
But
creates a good opportunity.
that is not the direction of college football right now, and it's kind of that adapt or die type of scenario. You know, I said a few years back that I thought Iowa and Wisconsin had an advantage because they were the holdovers that were the pro style I formation, things that other teams weren't used to seeing. So they had a little bit of an advantage because they still run the old school stuff. Now I think that's not necessarily the case. And you just have to understand that this is the era of the mobile quarterback. And the better the athlete you throw back there, doesn't have to be the best passer. It's great if he is. It's great if he's got that acumen to him. But as long as he's got the ability to buy time with his feet or make yards with his feet or avoid negative plays where you're staying ahead of the sticks, you're fine. You know, you look at guys like, do I think Lamar Jackson is a great passing quarterback? He's good, but he's not great. But what sets him apart is his ability to extend plays and keep his eyes downfield to do that. Jaden Daniels is the same way. You know, he's a rookie, but you know, and he's got a strong arm, but that ability to keep himself alive in those and keep his eyes downfield allows those guys to get open, and that's what the college game needs more. That's what Iowa needs more. You see it, you know, him being able to extend the plays coming across, and I know the ball was dropped. I think it was thrown to Seth Anderson, but a little behind him, but it's still a catchable ball.
Still catchable.
But it was the kind of play that you need. You know, that's the kind of play that the original play breaks down, and he's able to find that on that waggle play. So, you know, I think there's no way that you can go back unless Brendan gets hurt or he just absolutely stinks up the joint beyond belief. And he'd have to be Deacon Hill level low.
Wow. And I agree with you 100%, but there's just a faction of people that I've seen online that are arguing that Cade should not lose his job because he was injured. And I'm sorry. In my opinion, when he left the game against Northwestern after throwing that horrendous pick six, at that point, to me, he lost his job. And I'm sorry, you can say that he got injured and that gives you a saved face like we talked about, but in my opinion, he lost it.
I would question whether he was truly injured or not, but
well, that's an argument for another day. But I think Sullivan,
you can't.
Yeah, you can't. No, I think Sullivan throws the ball well enough that it's something that the defense has to pay attention to. They can't key on him either running or throwing, or I don't mean running or throwing, I mean running or handing the ball off. They have to also watch his throwing. As he threw the ball well enough. He threw that nice ball to Ortworth. He threw another nice ball to Jerry Bowie, I believe.
One to Jacob Gill.
Jacob Gill, that touchdown pass. I mean, he just presents so many other options that Iowa has not had in the past with Cade that now they have. And I think that's what really messed Wisconsin up. They came in thinking this kid can't throw. He's just going to run the ball. And then he threw the ball and he was accurate and they got some pretty good yardage on it. All of a sudden they're like, oh, we got to stop and wait, think about what he's doing here. If he's going to throw that ball, you know, he's doing well enough that he's going to hurt us. So it just really puts stuff in their minds that they've got to start thinking, I got to be honest with this kid. I can't just key on something here. Which when Cade's in there, they just key on Johnson because they know Cade's not going to hurt him throwing the ball.
That is the offense.
And I know people are going to argue with me and they're going to say that I'm wrong, but what I see is what I comment on.
It's an opinion. I mean, everybody's got an opinion about something, and you know, there's no right or wrong. You can agree or you can disagree. That's fine. You know, if you want to disagree, come with a valid opinion of your own as to why you think, you know, Cade McNamara deserves to stay the starter. What has he done to earn that starting position back? I don't know that you can really come up with the facts to back that up right now, or the stats to back it up?
7 of 10, 93 yards, 9 rushes, 58 yards. Each was a TD, passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown. That's proof enough to me.
Yeah.
If he starts, if he goes in against UCLA, and like you said, he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat, then yeah, bring Cade in. I'm fine with it. But Cade shouldn't start. I'm sorry. He should not start the game. I don't want to have to go through a quarter and a half of Iowa struggling before we decide to do something.
And I fully believe that what'll happen is Brendan Sullivan will start. Cade will be the number 2 or an on the depth chart, and it will be more of a, well, we're going to start Brendan because we don't want to bring him back too quick. You know, he's still coming out of concussion protocol, yada yada yada, and you know, we're going to play it on the safe side, and we'll reevaluate in a few weeks to see where we're at. Well, at that point, you're looking at bowl games. So, and honestly, if you win the next 3 games and you go 9-3 and you get a bowl game, I honestly could probably see Kirk starting him in the bowl game just because this is his last game.
Start him and then take him out.
I don't know, maybe, give him a chance, whatever. It's his last game probably ever, because I don't think he's going to stick to an NFL squad of any sort. So I could see him doing that. And, if he doesn't produce, then you bring in Brendan Sullivan to try to save the day. But, I think a lot of times people look at bowl games anymore as more exhibition, and with guys opting out, whatnot. So, okay, fine, whatever. But I don't think you can start him the rest of the regular season.
No, I agree.
So
I got some other odds and ends things here about last night that I wanted to mention. The defense, I thought, played very well. They won the turnover battle 2-0, which was awesome. 2 interceptions. That one was very nice by Nick Jackson, where he kicked it in the air. Of course, people are saying now they could have been called for a penalty on that. Well, I'm glad they didn't do that. Reese Dakin had 3 punts for a 53.3 yard average. That was pretty good. And also,
which isn't bad considering his first one was a 49-yard punt, but only a net of 29. Because it went in the end zone.
Yeah. But then he had put one inside the 10, didn't he?
One at the 6, yeah.
Okay. But some of those early penalties, I had to scratch my head. I didn't know what exactly, with the clapping and the defensive, they calling delay. I understand the rule. But when a guy's on defense can shift, and he wasn't shifting forward, he was shifting sideways, how is that a penalty on Iowa? When you're allowed to do that, and then, they're saying, because he's doing it late. He don't know the snap count.
So,
he doesn't know when he's going to snap that ball.
He can move whenever he wants.
That's why it scratched my head. I'm like, well, that just doesn't, even the announcer said, I don't know where he's coming up with that at, but that's not the rule.
And, honestly, I know the emphasis is on the clapping, but I would still I'd even question that, because here's the way I look at that. You choose as an offense to use a clap as a snap count. What if the defense has 2 claps means shift right, 1 clap means shift left for the offense or for the defensive line? Are you telling the defense that they're not allowed to do that now because the offense uses that as their snap count? I don't care. It's different if you're using an audible snap count and you're using a keyword like go. Yeah, and they're hollering go, and that's causing it. That I get.
That's a problem.
But if I've used defensive hand signals of, pointing and a clap is moved to the left and a single clap is moved to the right, that's on the offensive players to understand. Defense has just as much a right to have signals as they do.
Yeah.
And what it came down to is they were whining about it. The center whined that because he screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
And he clapped. Give me a break. What if Iowa says, we're going to go on first sound as our snap count. Now, anytime the defense talks, is it trying to mix signals there? I mean, where do you draw the line?
Right.
If you're choosing to use a clap as your snap signal, that's your problem. That's new. I mean, I think it's stupid. That was the dumbest penalty. I get that that's the rule of the game, and I just think it's stupid.
There needs to be
The
a little
second
bit
one,
of
yes, I
judgment
would.
involved.
Yeah,
There
the
wasn't on
second one I
that.
would totally agree it was an asinine penalty. It seemed like they made that one up.
Yeah.
And then I thought the unnecessary roughness or unsportsmanlike conduct or whatever it was they called on Castro was very weak because the guy was laying full weight on his player and he pushes him off of him.
Yeah.
Okay, that was weak. But, it calmed down after that. They made it less about themselves. But those penalties pretty much gave Wisconsin 3 points.
Speaking of 3 points, I want to call attention to that missed 56-yard field goal from Drew Stevens. Did you see how did you see how far up
would have been good from 65?
Yeah, that's what I said. I said that was 60 plus if he'd have hit it. He could have made that.
That thing was about
easily.
3 foot from the top.
Yeah, man, that kid's got a heck of a leg.
I just wish you could get the.
And I wouldn't go away from him
on those.
I wouldn't go away from him if
I wouldn't either.
If there's an opportunity to use him, I would definitely throw him back out there for 56. He was close.
Kind of sits there and makes you wonder, God, could you have tried him from 64 against Iowa State? Yeah. I mean,
at first I was like, there's no way, but
after watching him, there was definitely a way.
Yeah, he's got a stronger leg than I gave him credit for.
This was a cooler night with some moisture in the air too.
Yeah.
And that was a nice humid day and ball carries a little bit more. I would have, but anyway.
I thought Kamari Moulton and Jazz Patterson really ran the ball hard. It's like they had something to prove, and it was nice to see.
Yeah. I liked hearing the announcers say that the quality backs just stuck behind a really good back in Caleb Johnson. Not to their fault.
Right.
It's good to have that. It's good to have that issue.
They'll have their chance next year.
3 very good ones. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll have their chance next year. I mean, to be like starter and one and 1A.
Yeah.
But that's really about all I have about last night. I mean, good defense. Offense played well. Didn't have to have a great quarterback contribution. He didn't have to be Dan Marino out there for us, which was good. No. Caleb does what Caleb does. And Caleb did what Caleb did. So, other than that, I guess I don't have a lot else. I wanted to cover that Sullivan going back and whether Kirk would bring him in and be the starter, whether he'd go back to Cade. And I wanted to talk to you about it and see if you thought the same way I did, because I don't think there's any way you do it. I just don't.
No. I do have one observation from last night, more from a Wisconsin standpoint than from an Iowa standpoint. We've watched football for years, and we've watched Wisconsin for years. And the thing about Wisconsin is they always had an identity. They're very much like Iowa. Iowa has an identity. They know who they are. They know what drives the engine of that offense or their defense. What I saw last night was a team with no identity at all. I see a coach who's trying to turn an air raid system out of something that's not there. You had a guy in Tyree Walker who was averaging almost 5 yards a carry when they let him run the ball. Their running backs ran the ball well. They just didn't do it. They rather drop back and try to throw the ball than run it like the Wisconsin of old. And I think that is the biggest problem that Wisconsin has right now, is a lack of identity and kind of an arrogance by their coach of, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to do it the way that's going to work. I want it done my way. We've kind of seen that with Kirk at times. So we can sympathize with Badger fans. Not that I want to sympathize with Badger fans because, let's be honest, anytime a conference foe is struggling, that's good for us. But that was not a good Wisconsin team. like I've seen the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's not a good Wisconsin team like I've seen over the last 4 or 5 years. And that includes last year. Last year, they had more of a running identity. You lose your starting quarterback in the third game of the year, and you need to go back and go back to the drawing board and say, okay, we might need to reevaluate things. Maybe, yeah, we want to push more towards this West Coast and this air raid offense, whatever. But what's going to get us there this year is probably our running game. So let's lean on that. That's what I was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, Tim Lester wants to air the ball out. He wants to throw the ball more. But he understands I've got a bell cow that's a beast. I've got an offensive line that knows how to block for him. And I don't need to throw if I can run the ball for 330 yards. That's where Wisconsin was a little arrogant. And I watched Luke Fickell's post-game remarks last night, and the one thing that kind of stood out to me was that he kind of hinted at that was the toughest game that that Wisconsin's played this year, as far as the team absolutely taking it to him. He says, you talk about, Alabama, but Alabama has like 2 guys that you really have to game plan for, and one of them's going to go off. He says, we knew who was going to go off here, and we couldn't stop it. And, to me, he is a little arrogant in his approach, but that was a backhanded compliment to Iowa, I think, they just absolutely whooped us, and this is the worst we've been whooped all year.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the observations I had. I thought Iowa played probably one of their best games, not maybe as close to a full 40-minute game as possible, with the exception of a couple of those, obviously the penalties that you call them, they called them penalties, they weren't, whatever. But I think, from a overall standpoint, some of their hollow yards at the end, they got about 40 yards, 45 yards at the end. I put them up over about 230 yards. Otherwise, they were under 200 yards. So I thought Iowa played extremely well, and if they continue to play that way, there's not a team left on their schedule that can even hang with them.
Till they get to the bowl game.
Until they get to a bowl game, yes. That will be a different story.
Yeah.
Because they'll be playing somebody that's good.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think the last 3 opponents on our schedule are very good.
No.
Nebraska's probably the best team on there of the bunch, and they're struggling. They have no identity.
They just lost at
either.
home to UCLA, so
yeah. So
yeah, I mean, how do you do that? I think there's a lot of heat underneath of Rule right now.
Yeah, we'll see.
His feet are getting hot.
So
speaking of UCLA,
what do you say we put this one to bed?
Yeah, let's do the UCLA preview. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, I got some stuff on UCLA here. They're 3-5 overall. They're 2-4 in the conference. They are coached by Deshaun Foster, who was a previous running back for UCLA back in the day. He's in his first season. They have 3 wins against Hawaii, Rutgers, and Nebraska. And they have losses to Indiana, LSU, Oregon, Penn State, and Minnesota. They've lost to some pretty good teams there.
And let me ask you this,
okay,
before you go on. The 3 wins that they have, are those all 3 road wins?
Well, Nebraska's definitely a road win. I think Rutgers is a road
Rutgers
win.
was too, but I don't know if Hawaii was.
I think, I'm not sure. That's first game of the season. I'd have to look that up. I want to say they were actually in Hawaii.
I think it was.
So they may have won all their games on the road.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
Huh. I guess I never really looked at that.
There's no home crowd, and there's no home crowd at the Rose Bowl, so there's no home field advantage there.
Well, let's hope that that holds true for at least till next Friday, through next Friday. They're led by quarterback Ethan Garbers, who can throw the ball. He's a decent thrower, good quarterback from a throwing standpoint. He will run. He's not a running quarterback per se. He's not going to be an Aiden Childs, is it?
No,
he's not going to take off and just run on you. But if the field's open to him, he will run it. I mean, he had a 57-yard run against Nebraska yesterday. He's 141 of 216 for 1,703 yards. That's a 65% completion percentage. He has 9 interceptions, though. that seems a little high. 50 rushes for 103 yards, and like I said, 57 of it came yesterday on one play. He does have a backup who has not played a lot, but he has some experience, Justin Martin. He's 24 of 35, 167 yards and 1 TD, 68.7% completion percentage. He's just been in limited action. From a running back standpoint, not a lot there. There is a couple of guys. Jalen Berger, some of you might recognize his name. He is a transfer from Michigan State. He has 42 rushes, 148 yards, and no TDs. Then there's Keegan Jones, 25 rushes, 123 yards, 1 TD, but 12 receptions for 179 yards and 1 TD. And then there's TJ Harden. He's got 73 rushes for 226 yards. He's kind of their main running back, but he doesn't have a lot of yards, but he's got 1 TD, 27 receptions, 241 yards. So that tells me that they throw the ball to the running backs out of the backfield somewhat freaky. So screens, and little flare routes. Tight end, Maliki. I knew I was going to butcher this name. Matavio, 24 receptions, 303 yards, and no TDs. That's their tight end. Wide receiver is Quasi Gilmer, 16 receptions, 213 yards, 1 TD. Logan Loya, 20 receptions, 200 yards, 3 TDs. Defensive.
I mean, I think from what I read, they only average like 78.9 yards rushing per game. So
not good.
I'm not concerned with them running the ball on us.
Right. Now on defense, they do have a really good linebacker, and I wouldn't be surprised by what he's in the conference, like an all-conference type player. Carson Schlesinger. He's got 85 tackles, 3 sacks. He is a linebacker, and then he got another linebacker named Cade Medrano. He's at 46 tackles and 1 interception, and their most accomplished defensive back is Brian Addison, 35 tackles, 2 picks. Nobody else has more than 1. Their kicker is Mateen Begani. He's 14 of 14 on extra points and 12 of 14 on field goals with a 54 long. Their punter is Brody Richter, 28 punts, 1,215 yards for a 43.39 yard average with a 61 long. I've got some notes here. It says they throw the running back out of the backfield, which I just mentioned. Garbers is not a runner. However, he had a 57-yard run. I just said that too. Team's been playing well of late. He started the season slow. Played very good. Some pretty good teams early on. I think if Iowa gets ahead of them early, they could probably they'll start pushing the panic button. It is a Friday night game on a short week with travel, so that might be to Iowa's detriment. But we'll see. We'll see if Iowa comes out. I know Iowa does not have a great record when it comes to traveling west, especially out to the West Coast. So we'll see how this team reacts versus what we've seen in the past with the trends.
Well, the last 3 trips to the Rose Bowl have not been well, so hopefully this one is. 4 trips.
Right. Well, the last trip we made out there, didn't we beat USC like 50-something to 49 to 24 or something?
That was the Holiday Bowl in San Diego.
Well, still West Coast.
Yeah, but I'm talking the actual playing in the Rose Bowl itself. Playing at the stadium, the Rose Bowl.
Right. No, the Rose Bowls have not been kind to Iowa at all.
No.
Not since the 60s.
Yeah. My observations of UCLA at this point, I watched some of that game yesterday. I watched them against Rutgers a little bit, and yeah, they're getting better, but I think that's because of the competition they're playing. Rutgers is way more disappointing than I anticipated them being this year.
Yeah.
Nebraska, I think Nebraska's schedule was very soft at the beginning, although they did beat Colorado, which, Colorado's I begrudgingly say they're in the top 25 now, which they probably don't belong there because they play in a weak Big 12, but they are 6-2, 7-2, something like that, 6-2. So, give them that, but I just think they've benefited from recently UCLA has benefited from who they played. And both of those games were single possession. Other team was driving at the end of the game and committed a turnover, or I think Rutgers, there was they'd gotten a nice gain on something, but there was a penalty and it brought them back, and then they ended up losing on fourth down or something. I don't remember exactly on that one, but both teams had an opportunity to win that game at the end. So it's not like UCLA is boat racing. I mean, somebody was talking about, oh, UCLA is a good team, Iowa will be lucky to win that game. I'm like, let's not anoint them the next Alabama just because they've beaten two poor teams. Let's slow the trolley truck up there, and yeah, they're playing better, but are they of the same caliber as the top 5 teams or 6 teams in the Big Ten? No. And to me, Minnesota's playing better right now too, but I don't think they're kind of a to me feel like they are a paper tiger when it comes to their record as well.
They got Penn State coming up yet.
I didn't think Illinois was as good as their record either. So, you just got to look at things from a holistic view of who have they played, what's the caliber, what's the result of those games. Now, like I said, all of those UCLA wins have been on the road, which maybe that bodes well for us that they're playing at home because they can't win there. So we'll see.
We'll cross our fingers that Iowa plays the kind of game they played last night and last week, and don't go out there and come out flat.
I think if they trot Brendan Sullivan out there and he continues to do what he's been doing, that, like I said, we've talked about it, how that energizes both the offense and the defense, and it makes them play better. I mean, here you're looking at 3 of the last 4 games. Iowa has scored 40 points or more in 3 of the last 4 games. So that's a good thing. We'll see what happens. All right, let's shift our gears now that November is here and basketball season is upon us. I believe tomorrow is the opening games for NCAA basketball season. I don't believe Iowa plays tomorrow, but
they do.
They do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the men play tomorrow night.
Tuesday.
No, the men play tomorrow night, and the women play on Wednesday. Tuesday's election day, so I don't think anybody plays, or maybe they do, and it might not. It might not be. It might be during the day or something, but definitely Monday night. Tomorrow night, the men's play for sure.
Okay. Well, then we'll leave them for last, and why don't you give us a preview of what you've seen from the women?
Okay. I did watch the exhibition game with Missouri Western the other night. I know you did too. I want to go through Iowa's preview. Iowa was 34-5 last season, and they were the national runner-up to South Carolina in the championship game. We all saw that. Iowa had some pretty key losses on the women's team last year. Lisa Bluter, 1. Jan Jensen is now the first-year head coach. 2, your National Player of the Year, Caitlin Clark, is no longer on the team. Kate Martin, Gabby Marshall, Sharon Goodman, and Molly Davis all have departed. Most of those, except for Sharon Goodman, I believe she had another year of eligibility, but she wanted to concentrate on her career. Totally respect that. We did get an incoming transfer. Lucy Olson, she is number 33. If you watch the game, you'll know her. If you don't know her, she is from Villanova. She is a senior. She'll be 1 year for Iowa. She was honorable mention All-American last season. She was unanimous first team All-Big East. She averaged 23.3 points, which was at 3rd nationally behind Caitlin Clark, and I want to say Juju Watkins. She's an 81% free throw shooter. She shoots 44% from the field, and she does not shoot three-pointers great, 29%. She was the 2021 Miss Pennsylvania basketball, or Pennsylvania Miss Basketball, however you want to say that. So look for her. She'll be a starter. She'll probably be the points leader for the team going forward. She'll be the leader of the team. I want to start with the incoming freshman now. You think Hannah? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I think Hannah's gonna. I think one of the things that Hannah's gonna miss is Caitlin's ability to feed the ball to her. There's nobody that passes the ball better than Caitlin.
Hannah's going to benefit from moving down to the 4 instead of playing the 5.
Maybe she's going to have to maybe start hitting some 8 and 10 foot jump shots rather than relying on being down underneath too. I'm not sure she's got that ability yet. Maybe she does, and she can prove me wrong, and I hope she does. Let's hit some incoming freshmen. I think it's a great class of freshmen. I'll start with Taylor Strimlow. She's from Verona, Wisconsin. She's a 5'10" guard. She's the number 88 prospect in the nation, according to ESPN. She will be using uniform number 1. So if you're watching number 1, that's Taylor Strimlow. Let's go to Ava Hayden. She's from Sherwood, Oregon. She's a 6'4" center. Her uniform number is 5. She is the number 36 prospect from ESPN and the number 5 post prospect nationally last season. She's the first player Iowa's ever had from Oregon on the women's team. She's a 2-time academic All-State and a 2-time All-State second team. There's 2-time All-State player and also a second team All-State player. So she was All-State twice and All-State second team twice. Aaliyah Guyton. Somebody who's going to probably recognize her last name. She's from Peoria, Illinois. She's 5'7" guard. Number 11 to be her number. She's a number 57 prospect on ESPN and the number 1 player in Illinois. Her mother was a professional basketball player for the Phoenix Mercury in the WNBA at one point. And her father, some of you are going to recognize AJ Guyton, former Indiana Hoosier and Chicago Bull. So she's got some pretty good lineage there as far as her mom and dad. Pretty good players in their own right.
I think she's still rehabbing from an injury, though.
She is. She did not play in the exhibition game. Next on the list is Callie Levine. She is from Solon. She's Iowa's Miss Basketball. She's a 5'9" guard. Her number will be 32. She's also Iowa's Basketball Player of the Year from the USA Today publication. She averaged 22 points per game, 6.9 rebounds. She was a 3A state champion, and she was a 2024 McDonald's All-American nominee. Next on the list is Tegan Mullaney. She's from McFarland, Wisconsin. She's a 6'1" guard. She'll be wearing number 55. She's the number 64 overall prospect. She's a 2-time All-Conference, 2-time first team All-State, 2-time MVP for the team. High school record, and at her school for points in a game, 62. Points in a season, points in a career, tied for most 3-pointers in a game of 9. And she is second most rebounds in a game at 19. She's the number 2 player out of Wisconsin. We did see her the other night, and she would remind you of McKenna Warnock, probably. But I think maybe with a little bit smoother shot.
Yeah, I was thinking the girl that, the one player of the year, right, or Big Ten player of the year right before
Megan
Gustafson. Before her. She was a point guard, I think. And I'm drawing a blank, but
yeah, me too.
That's who I kind of think of her as. That's kind of who she reminded me of.
We only have one sophomore on the team. Did you know that?
Is that Kenise Johnson?
Kenise Johnson from Joliet, Illinois. She's a 5'4" guard. She'll be wearing number 13. She was injured a lot of last season, but did get in and scored 4 points versus Wisconsin last year before being basically sidelined.
She got hurt late in the season, like last 2 or 3 games of the Big Ten schedule.
Right. Okay, juniors. Taylor McCabe from Fremont, Nebraska. She's a 5'9" guard. She'll be wearing number 2. She'll probably start this year. She had a career high 18 points with 6 3-pointers against Florida Gulf Coast University last year. She had 5 3-pointers versus Minnesota last year. She averages 3.3 points per game off the bench. She shoots 46% from the 3-point line. She's pretty good about shooting 3-pointers. I'll give her that. And she shoots 83% from the free throw line. Another junior, Jada Jimphy. from Johnston. She's a 6'1" combo guard forward. Number 23. She hosts her own podcast. Did you know that?
I did know that.
She's her podcast is called Fresh Talk, TAWK. And her career high last year was 7 points against Bowling Green. Doesn't play a lot. Hannah Stolke is a junior. She is from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. She's a 6'2" forward. Number 45. She's second team all Big Ten. She had 47 points against Penn State last year. That's the third most points scored by an Iowa player and the second most points scored in Carver Hawkeye Arena. She has a school record for free throw attempts and a Carver Hawkeye record for field goals made versus Penn State. She had 23 points in the Final Four game against UConn. Okay, now we'll go with seniors. Sydney Afalter from Chicago, Illinois. She's a 5'11" guard. She will be wearing number 3. She's Big Ten All-Tournament team last year. She scored a career high 14 rebounds against number 8 Virginia Tech in the early season tournament that they played last year. She had a career high of 18 points versus Penn State. I think everybody scored 18 points against Penn State last year. 3 10-plus point game performances in the Big Ten tournament. That's what got her Big Ten tournament, all Big Ten tournament. She helped propel Iowa to the Big Ten tournament title third time in 3 years. Next up is Kylie Feuerbach. She is from Sycamore, Illinois. 6-foot guard and number 4. She's an Iowa State transfer. A couple years ago, she transferred from Iowa State, so she's been on Iowa's team for a couple years. She had a career high 4 3-pointers versus Minnesota last fall. Career high 13 points also that same night. She has 4 steals versus Ohio State. That's the second most in a single game. Probably behind Caitlin. Okay, AJ Ediger. Some people call her Ediger. She's from Hudsonville, Michigan. 6'2" forward, number 34. Career high 8 points versus Northwestern last fall, or last winter. She had 2 steals also against Northwestern. She's kind of a role player. She comes in when we start getting some people into foul trouble, and she can play a role and just fill in. Addison O'Grady actually started the other day in that game against Missouri Western, a game which Iowa won, by the way, 110-55. If anybody doesn't know. Addison O'Grady is from Aurora, Colorado. She's 6'4". She's a forward center. She had a season high 14 points in the first round of the NCAA tournament versus Holy Cross last year. I said she started the exhibition game. She has significant playing time this year, probably. Her and Ava Hayden will most likely play. One will play, the other one will play. It's just like they will transfer or sub in from each other. And I kind of look for, I hate to say this, but I kind of look for Ava Hayden to kind of win that spot towards the end of the season. But maybe she won't. I just think she's that good of a player underneath from what I saw the other night. I wanted to look at their schedule. They got some pretty good games coming up. Their next game is Wednesday against Northern Illinois. But they play Georgia Tech in the Ally Tournament in Charlotte, North Carolina. They played Drake in Des Moines, which is always a competitive game. Last year was the outlier. Kansas, they placed Kansas at the Sanford Pentagon. I shouldn't say Pentagram. Pentagon in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That was a slip on my part. They host Washington State this year at our Carver Hawkeye, and they play in the Cancun Challenge with Rhode Island and BYU. They also play Tennessee. Did you know they played Tennessee this year?
I did not know that.
That's in the Women's Champions Classic. Of course, they have Iowa State, but this year it's at Carver. They open Big Ten play at Michigan State, and we know Michigan State's going to be good. They have UCLA and USC both at Carver this year and do not travel out there. So they'll get to see Juju Watkins in Iowa City, the preseason player of the year candidate. UCLA, of course, coming into Carver, was also an Elite 8 team last year. They do travel to Seattle and Eugene, but they do not, like I said, they do not go to LA. Indiana and Nebraska back-to-back home games. And they only play Ohio State one time on the road. My thoughts for the team are freshman Ava Hayden and Tegan Mullaney will see the most freshman minutes, probably. Sydney Falter, knee issue. I hope that it heals and she has no ill effects from that. It was just scoping. I think they said she'd be back probably early this month. Kylie Feuerbach just said she needs to shoot the three-pointer at an above 40% clip. Taylor McCabe will need to be the catalyst to the team because I think she's going to play guard and point guard some. Hannah should continue to dominate underneath if she avoids foul trouble. I look for Iowa to be a 5th or 6th place team in the Big Ten. I just don't see how USC and UCLA, Indiana, and Ohio State, as loaded as they are, following anywhere below Iowa. There's a lot of good teams in the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten's as stacked this year in women's basketball as it's ever been. That's really all I have. I think that they're going to be fun to watch. I don't know if they're going to have the pace of play that they had last year with Caitlin. I think Caitlin drove the bus last year, and she drove it fast. And I don't think that Lucy Olson, if she takes over the point guard spot, and all indications is she probably will. I don't think she's going to run the pace of play as fast as Caitlin did. I don't think she has the passing ability of Caitlin. What I see out of Lucy Olson that I thought was exceptional is her mid-range game. Mm-hmm. She is very good 12 feet and in. Three-pointers, I think she can improve that. I think if she gets back up to 35%, if she can shoot 35% this year, I think she'll have a good year. I look for her to be her and Hannah will be the leaders of the team as far as points. And I think Ava Hayden will come along and be a force towards the end of the season after she's had a chance to get most of the season under her belt and figure out the speed of the game. She looked decent the other night, but that was not a great Missouri Western team. So I don't know what you can really take out of that game, but we'll find out. The competition gets better. I don't think it gets great. Northern Illinois is next on Wednesday night. If you've got BTN Plus, you could probably watch that game. And I would recommend that you do. They're fun to watch, and you'll get a chance to enjoy some of the freshmen. I'm sure that they will get some playing time. Hopefully Sydney Falter can come back and get some early season games under her belt before things really start getting to crunch time. Especially when Big Ten season starts. I would really like to see her get a few games and trust that knee again. And we can go from there. But it'll be a fun season. I'm looking forward to it. I know you have the men's preview, and you're going to do that next. Yep. So I will relinquish the mic to you for the men's preview.
Mine is far less detailed in that. Mine's more of what I've seen so far. But yeah, the men are coming off of an NIT second round loss to Utah last year into their season. They did lose Patrick McCaffrey, Tony Perkins, Ben Cricky. I think there's somebody else too. But in some cases, I think that might be addition by subtraction. Not really the highest defensive presence there. Now, I think the one that would be missed the most is probably Perkins. But towards the end of the season last year, he was a shell of himself, and I think he kind of knew that he was moving on, so he just kind of cashed it in at that point. But they did bring in some incoming freshmen, Cooper Koch, who is a very familiar name, son of J.R. Koch, is 6'8". Combo guard forward, probably in the mold of what you would have seen from more of a Pat McCaffrey style. Step out, be able to hit the three-pointer, but yeah, he can still post up down low if he needs to. The other freshmen that they brought in, other guys that they brought in were transfer from Morehead State, Drew Thelwell, who was a grad transfer. He got some time in the exhibition the other night. Probably would like to have seen him get a little bit more. I think he could be a little bit more of a defensive presence as opposed to the offensive threat that you would want. But I have some observations on that as well. You have Seydou Traore, who is a transfer from Manhattan. He's a 6'7" forward. I saw some flashes out of him. He needs to stay out of foul trouble, but he does have a pretty smooth shot. Just needs to translate his game from Manhattan to the Big Ten. He was, I think, 16 or 17 point scorer per game in Manhattan. So he definitely has the ability there. Just needs to translate that to the Big Ten. The other incoming freshman was Chris Taggio. He did not get in the other night, and I think that was more of nothing to do with injury and more of a Fran just kind of forgot to get him in there and wanted to get him in. But I think they're going to try to bring him along kind of slowly. And he's kind of I don't want to say he's a prospect or a project, but he probably has a little less basketball background than some of the other guys. So you want to get him acclimated a little bit more, but he is a 6'8", 240-pound forward. So he does have size. Guy, they said they can jump out of the gym. So, he's definitely got the athleticism. We just need to get him in there and see what he can do. Other than that, it's the same cast of characters that are back. Brock Harding is going to be your starting point guard based on the exhibition game. Did not have a very good exhibition game. Shooting-wise, turnover-wise, I think he had 6 assists, 3 turnovers. That's not where you want that to be. Iowa as a team turned the ball over way too much in that game. I think they had 12 turnovers, which is they had 8 or 9 in the first half, so they really tempered that down in the second half. But again, that's could be quality of competition too. Josh Dix, I think, is probably the all-around best player on the team. And that's not taking anything away from Owen Freeman or Peyton Sanford, but I think Josh Dix is just the most fluid all-around player. Kind of reminds me of Joe Wieskamp, but only with a better stroke. So that's a good comparison to have. Ladji Dembele is a starter as well. He bulked up in the offseason, 6'8", 255. What I saw from him, I wish he would get a little bit more aggressive and bang down low and stop thinking that the only shot that he can make is a three-pointer, because he could be a very big force down low at 6'8", 255. And he should be a heck of a rebounder because he is, again, very athletic and can jump. He just seems to be out of position when it comes to his down low positioning. So I don't know if that's something they just need to work on or what. Then you've got the Sanford boys. Peyton is a senior. Price is a sophomore. You know what you're going to get out of Peyton. You're going to get a guy that can shoot the three, get some rebounds, scrappy guy. He's going to go off some games for 25 or 30 points, and other games he's going to only have 14. But you hope that on those games that he struggles with his shot, that the rest of the guys can step up and fill in for him. Price was very hit and miss the other night. Once he started getting it going, though, he was very consistent. Looked pretty good as far as shooting the ball. Again, hard to tell based on the quality of competition. You're playing a Division II school, so I don't know what he'd be like against D1 caliber, Big Ten caliber teams, but we'll see. I think that he is going to take a step forward as the year progresses. And then you've got Owen Freeman. What can you say? Kid was co-Big Ten Freshman of the Year. He is just solid. He is kind of like a Luka Garza type of player without the outside shot. My understanding is he has worked on his outside shot and his mid-range shot a little bit more, but he is going to be most effective when he's down low. And he's got some pretty good down low moves. He knows how to position his body. You know what you're going to get from him as well. The unknowns on this team are, like I said, Drew Thelwell. I don't know what we're going to see from an offensive standpoint. I didn't get enough of a sample size the other night to really draw a conclusion on him. Evan Bronze came in. He provided some depth. Didn't hurt him. Didn't necessarily, stand out as a guy that you could go to for point production in a hurry, but he was very solid and played very well on the defensive side, I thought. Give you a little bit more of a rim protection. But that does lead me to the defense. So the observation that I would have is Iowa tends to put their emphasis on offense, which anybody that's watched Iowa play over the last 10 or 12 years, that's Fran's style. And to me, that's exciting basketball, right? Everybody wants to see that when it comes to football. Everybody gets aggravated when you've got defensive battles in football and, there's not enough offense. Well, go turn on the basketball team. There's a lot of offense. The problem with that is when you don't put a very much emphasis on the defensive side, when you struggle on the offensive side, you're going to get blown out. I wish that they would put combinations out there that may not necessarily be high point production players, but could be lockdown defenders, because you can make up for a deficiency on the offensive side by playing good defense easier than you can make up for a defense with a good offense, because there's days where your shots are just not going to fall. And when that happens, you're going to get blown out. And we've seen it. You've seen those games where, I think Eastern Illinois is still scoring on them from 3 years ago. And, that's inexcusable to have teams do that. You're trying to play these 92-90 games and hope that you got the 92 at the end. Well, that's not always going to happen. Tighten up on the defense, maybe put some guys out there that, your point guard is more of a lockdown guy that can stop their, let's say they've got a point guard that's just an absolute scoring machine and he can lock him down. Okay. You hold a guy that's a 25-point scorer to 10 points. You don't need your point guard to score 15 or 20 points. You've already taken 15 points away from them. He only needs to get you 5 or 7. That's probably good enough. So you can sacrifice sometimes and not necessarily have to run that, all offense, no defense, hope you outscore everybody. That's the biggest issue I see with this team. And the other issue I saw, and it's from the secret scrimmage to the exhibition game, they're not a good 3-point shooting team yet. They are shooting about 24% from 3. Now, they're still putting points on the board, and that's, again, quality of competition. Scenarios within those secret scrimmages, I don't know how those go, but you're going to have to shoot better than 24% if you're going to make any hay in the Big Ten at all. And if you're going to rely on your offense to be your bell cow and your defense to hopefully stop them once in a while, you better be a better 3-point shooting team than 24%. If you're not going to be, then you better put some guys out there that can lock down on the defensive side. We've heard all these people say, the defense, got more athletic people, defense would be better. From what I saw the other night, it's not. It's no different than what it was. I saw so many blow-bys, guys just, for lack of a better term, half-assing it on defense. It's like their philosophy is, well, if we can get them to use 15 seconds off the clock before they score, we'll go down and score in 5. Well, what happens when you don't? That's the issue I have. And that's what I see the issue with this team. If you wanted my honest opinion on outclassed or outlook for this team for this year, if they start playing better defense and if they start shooting a little bit better, they have a very solid chance of making a late tournament bid. They're not going to be like a 4, 5, or a 6 seed. There may be a 9 or 10 seed. If one of those two things doesn't happen, NIT is the best you're going to look at. And again, this is a young team. Outside of Peyton Sanford, everybody will be back, and Drew Thelwell, everybody will be back next year. So, provided nobody transfers. But it's a young team. there's going to be some growing pains, and they're going to win games that they probably shouldn't win, and they're going to lose games they probably shouldn't lose. That's just the nature of the beast when you got a young team. I have high hopes for them that I think, if they can get some things shored up, they will be a pretty decent team. But if what I saw the other night was what I'm going to see on a nightly basis, they're going to struggle in the Big Ten.
I think one of the things that I've noticed, maybe I'm wrong, and I might be, but I just think that the Big Ten might be just a little bit down this year from what it has been talent-wise in the past. No more Zach Edey. There's been, some of the kids from Illinois that played really, really well. They're gone. Yeah. I don't know that the teams that there's not going to be one really, really great team coming out of the Big Ten. There'll be some good teams. There'll be some teams that'll win a few games that they're not supposed to win. But I think overall, as a whole, you're just going to see a pretty straightforward, balanced league. You'll have your contenders, of course. You always do. You always have your 1, 2, and 3 teams. But I think it's going to be one of those situations where it's going to be more. They're going to be more comparable over the entire league than they've been in the past. I think it's all going to be pretty straightforward. Everybody's going to be pretty even keel.
I think if you looked at the Big Ten on paper, probably the top 5 teams, in my opinion, are UCLA, Indiana, not in any order either, by the way. UCLA, Indiana, probably Ohio State.
Purdue
will be good. I mean, they're always going to throw a 7'12" guy out there that they're going to find from somewhere. So they're always going to have that. So Purdue's going to be good. Michigan State, you can't disclaim the Izzo factor because he's going to play the refs and get some wins that he probably shouldn't get anyway. Outside of that, I think there's some good parity within the league.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a whole lot about Rutgers and Maryland.
I think Penn State's going to shock some people.
I think Maryland could be good too.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know enough about Oregon at this point. But it's Dana Altman out there, so he's going to put a good product on the court as it is. So,
I think
I just don't know enough about.
I think of the 4 new teams, Washington's probably going to be the one that's going to come in with the least amount of talent.
Yeah, and that's not to say that they're going to be talentless.
Yeah. Right.
I just it's hard to. You're right. It is very
18 teams now.
League. Yeah. So
that's kind of a different dynamic.
Yep.
It doesn't.
So yeah, it'll be an interesting season. I think there'll be games where you'd be like, oh yeah, this is a very good team, and then there'll be games where you're watching thinking, how are they ever going to win another game? And I think that's just that's the cycle we go through as an Iowa fan. Sometimes we've had that over the last few years of you have a game where they just look like they're lost, and you think, how are they ever going to win another game? And then they go rip off 3 or 4 wins in a row. And you're like, oh, well, we're back on track, and then they'll lose to Minnesota when they shouldn't. It's just something like that. It's just crazy. It's the parody of basketball, and it's going to get worse as we get deeper into this NIL and this revenue sharing. Teams with the deepest pockets are going to get the biggest talent, and those that aren't are just going to have to either be developmental and kind of be like that farm team for the Yankees, so to speak, where you're building guys up and then they transfer to the big schools when you've got them developed. I don't know. I would hate to think that Iowa is in that bucket, but I think that's kind of where they're at right now, at least on the men's side. If they could go out there and put together a 26-7 season this year and surprise everybody and be get past the first weekend or at least get to the second game of the NCAA tournament, maybe that tends to open some eyes a little bit, and people will be back on there, and there'll be more money to spend on players. I hate using that term, buying free agents in basketball, but that's what it comes down to. I don't know. We'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic about this team that if they can get things turned around, that they could be a pretty decent team. If not, they're going to struggle to get the NIT even. That's just my observations.
I agree with that assessment. I said earlier that I've seen more talented Iowa teams do less. And I've been on record already as saying that Iowa will be very fortunate to be even on the bubble at the end of the season. I just don't think it's that good of a team. I think they're young. I think Peyton Sanford's really the only real. I mean, and Owen Freeman. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good player, but I think they're the only real standout players on the team, to be honest. And there were years when we had Keegan Murray and Luka Garza that didn't do. They did all right. Don't get me wrong, but they didn't get past the first round of the tournament.
Yeah.
I
agree.
National Player of the Year didn't get past the first round, the first
National Player of the Year
weekend.
and a top 5 draft pick.
Exactly.
On the same
and
team.
You don't have that this year, and I think you're going to struggle, especially if you don't play defense.
Yeah, that's the key right there. If they could just, it's like we said in for football, if Iowa's offense could just get into the 70s with the defense that they've got, they'd be a playoff caliber team. Basketball is kind of the same boat. If they could just get in the 150s on the defensive efficiency, they could be a second weekend team. But I know a lot of people have Fran fatigue. I don't. I think I still like Fran. I still like Kirk. I'm not saying get rid of him, but things are going to change. You've got to adapt to the current game. And if you don't, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I think that says about as much as we're going to say about it. We got a question of the week so we can wrap this up?
Yeah. The question of the week this week is, Iowa is known to be a November team in football. Over the last 20 games, what is Iowa's record in the month of November? That is the question. I'm not giving any hints. So pop that into the comments. We'll see we'll see if anybody gets it right. Also, you get my prototype. So we do have
Punting is winning t-shirts.
Yeah,
merchandise now.
Working on a merchandise store with more than just t-shirts. There's things that are cheaper if you wanted to help support us in any way whatsoever. We're not trying to really profit off of this, but we do have to pay the expenses of the merchandise that is ordered. So we are doing that, and I have to pay the taxes on those. So working on the store, that should be out in the next couple of weeks. We'll be able to put a QR code on these videos, and you can go directly to our store. There's about 32 items out there on the store, things that I thought people might be interested in. Some of the stuff is not overly cheap, but some of it isn't too bad. So we'll have that ready to go here in a couple of weeks, I think. Just got to get some tax identification stuff taken care of for that, so that I don't get in trouble with the government. Other than that, we can wrap it up. As always, if you like the content you hear here, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about us, leave us comments, give us direction on things you'd like to see more. If you'd like to see a preview of some of the stuff that we're going to be selling, let me know. I can shoot you a link and you can take a look at it. Otherwise, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, and usual social media formats. That's a wrap on today. Anything else?
Nope, I don't.
All right, we'll wrap it up and finish up on a rousing Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.